Officer mistreats a street kid, only to discover he was his long-lost son. Sergeant Michael Thompson clenched his fist tightly as he watched the skinny boy who insisted on selling candy at the traffic light on Fifth Avenue. Another day, another brat blocking traffic and bothering honest drivers trying to go about their business in peace. "Hey you!" Michael shouted, stepping out of the patrol car with firm strides. "How many times do I have to tell you to get out of here?" The boy, who couldn't have been more than 15, looked at him with those big, frightened eyes Michael knew all too well. It was always the same story. They pretended to be pitiful to win people's sympathy and kept coming back day after day like pests. "Please, officer, I'm just trying to earn an honest buck," the boy murmured, clutching his box of candy tightly to his chest. "Honest?" Michael let out a bitter laugh. "Kid, you don't even know what that word means." It was then that Michael took a closer look at the boy's face. There was something familiar about his features, especially the shape of his chin and the way his ears slightly jutted forward. A strange shiver ran down his spine, but he shook his head, dismissing any foolish thoughts. "What's your name?" he asked, pulling out his notepad from his uniform pocket. "Jason, sir. Jason Thompson Carter." Michael's pen froze mid-air. Thompson Carter. The last name echoed in his mind like a gunshot. He had only known one person with that last name in his entire life, and she had disappeared 15 years ago, taking with her all his dreams of family and a secret he had never uncovered. "Your mother. What's her name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Sarah Carter, sir. But she's not around anymore." Michael's legs nearly gave way. Sarah Carter. His ex-wife, the only woman he had ever truly loved. The woman who had vanished one night without a trace, just after he had discovered her struggles with drinking and the other substances she used to escape reality. "What do you mean she's not around anymore?" Michael pressed, realizing his voice came out louder than he intended. Jason lowered his head, biting his lower lip in a gesture that tugged at another wave of familiarity in Michael's memory. "She got sick, you know. It took a few years, but in the end..." The boy swallowed hard. "Now it's just me." Michael closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the world spin around him. 15 years ago, Sarah had disappeared while pregnant. He had never known if she had gone through with the pregnancy or not, if she was alive, or he had always assumed she had terminated it or lost the baby. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just starting. Now back to the story. "Where do you live?" Michael asked, putting away his notepad without writing anything down. "At St. Joseph's Shelter over in the South Bronx. But I sneak out sometimes because..." Jason hesitated, looking straight into Michael's eyes. "Because my mom always said my dad worked around here, that he was a man of the law. She told me one day I'd find him." Michael's heart raced. Man of the law. Sarah had always called him that when they fought about his job, when she said he cared more about duty than he did about her. The memories flooded back like an avalanche. The arguments, her pleas for him to help her with her struggles, his own stubborn belief that he could save her just by being stricter. "Your father. Did your mum ever say anything else about him?" Michael could barely get the words out. Jason reached into the pocket of his worn-out shorts and pulled out a tarnished metal chain with a St. Michael medal hanging from it. She kept this and said it was his. He said he gave it to her when they got married, that St. Michael would protect our family. The boy looked at the medal fondly. "I guess he didn't care much about us, huh? Because he never came looking for us." Michael recognized the chain immediately. He had picked out that medal himself at a downtown jewelry store, spending his entire soldier's paycheck to get something special for Sarah on their wedding day. He remembered how she had cried with joy when he placed it around her neck, promising he would always protect their family. Can I see that chain?" he asked, holding out a trembling hand. Jason hesitated for a moment, but handed the necklace to Michael. On the back of the medal, the engraved initials were still visible, MT and SC, forever. Michael Thompson and Sarah Carter. Forever. Michael's legs gave out, and he sat on the curb, clutching the medal to his chest, as tears streamed uncontrollably down his face. 15 years searching for Sarah, 15 years wondering if she was alive, if she'd had his child, if she would ever return. And there was his boy, too thin, selling candy on the street, mistreated by his own father, who hadn't even recognized him. "Officer, are you okay?" Jason stepped closer, concerned. "Should I call someone?" "Jason..." Michael looked into the boy's eyes, seeing traces of Sarah mixed with his own. "How old are you?" 15, sir. I'll be 16 next month." The timing matched perfectly. Michael remembered the last night he'd spent with Sarah 3 days before she disappeared. She had tried to tell him something important, but he'd been too tired from work to listen. The next day she was gone. "Jason, I need you to come with me to the station. It's nothing bad, I promise. I just need to check something." The boy shrank back, hugging his candy box. "I didn't do anything wrong, officer. I'm just trying to survive." "I know, son. I know." The word son slipped naturally from Michael's lips, and he realized he had always known deep down that this was his boy. On the way to the station, Michael watched Jason in the rearview mirror. The boy had the same long fingers as him, the same broad forehead, the same habit of rubbing his nose when nervous. How had he been so blind for so long? "Jason, tell me about your life with your mom." The boy took a deep breath before answering. "Mom was good to me, you know, but she got really sad sometimes, drank stuff that made her act strange, said things that didn't make sense. When I was little, she told me stories about my dad, said he was a hero who protected people." Jason looked out the window. "I always wanted to meet him, ask why he never came to see us." Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. Hero. Sarah had always believed he was a hero, even when he doubted it himself. And now his son had grown up imagining a father who never really existed, because the real Michael had failed miserably to protect his family. At the station, Michael asked to speak privately with Jason in the meeting room. The boy sat on the edge of his chair, still uneasy, not understanding why this cop was being so kind. "Jason, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Would you trust me enough to take a blood test? A test that could change your life forever?" The boy's eyes widened. "What kind of test, sir?" "A test that could prove if I'm your father." The silence that followed was deafening. Jason sat frozen for long seconds, processing what he'd just heard. His hands began to tremble slightly. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "More serious than anything in my life." Michael stood up and knelt in front of Jason, holding the boy's small, calloused hands. "I knew your mother. I was married to her, and when she disappeared, I never knew that you existed." Jason began to cry, first softly, then with deep sobs that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. "Mom always said you were a police officer, that you worked in this area. I've been coming here for months, trying to find someone who knew a Michael Thompson." Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. Months. His son had spent months searching for him, selling candy at the traffic light, suffering on the streets, while he had treated him as just another troubled kid. "Forgive me, my son. Forgive me for not recognizing you sooner. Forgive me for being so hard on you." Father and son embraced right there in the middle of the precinct, 15 years of separation washed away by tears of relief and pain. Michael finally understood why he had always felt something different when he saw that boy at the traffic light. His father's heart had recognized what his mind had stubbornly ignored. "So now, Mr. Michael," Jason asked, still clinging to his father, "what's going to happen to me?" "Now we're going home, son. We're starting over." But Michael would soon find out things wouldn't be so simple. St. Joseph's Shelter had strict rules about releasing minors, and the fact that Michael was a cop didn't automatically guarantee custody of the boy. Besides, he'd need to officially prove his paternity and go through a series of psychological and social evaluations. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Mrs. Wilson, the social worker assigned to Jason's case, was called to the precinct to mediate the situation. She was a 60-year-old woman with grey hair tied in a bun who had dedicated her entire life to caring for abandoned children. Her experienced eyes missed no detail. "Sergeant Thompson, I understand the emotion of the moment, but we must follow protocol." "Mrs." Wilson examined the documents Michael had hastily gathered. "First, we'll need a DNA test. Second, a psychological evaluation for you and Jason. Third, a home visit to assess living conditions." "How long will that take?" Michael asked, keeping Jason close. "At least 2 months if everything goes smoothly." Mrs. Wilson looked at Jason with kindness. "In the meantime, the boy returns to the shelter, but with supervised visits on weekends." Jason squeezed Michael's hand. "No, I want to stay with my dad now. I've waited 15 years. Son, I know it's hard, but we'll do this the right way." Michael stroked Jason's curly hair. "This time I won't disappear. I promise." The first few days were torture for both of them. Michael barely slept, thinking about his son at the shelter, wondering if Jason believed he'd lied about everything. Meanwhile, Jason faced skepticism from the other boys at the shelter, who mocked him for believing he'd found his father after so long. "Bet that cop's just doing charity work," said Tyrone, a 17-year-old who'd lived at the shelter for 5 years. "These guys feel sorry for us for a while, then disappear. Always the same." "That's not true," Jason shot back, but inside, doubt crept in. What if Michael changed his mind? What if he decided he didn't want a son who'd grown up on the streets? During the first supervised visit, Michael arrived at the shelter with a bag full of gifts: new clothes, school supplies, some books, and a basic cell phone. "Thought you might need these," he said awkwardly. Jason took the clothes carefully, as if they were made of glass. It had been years since he'd gotten new clothes, only used donations that came to the shelter. "Thank you, Dad." The word Dad still felt strange in Jason's mouth, but it warmed his heart. Michael took him to eat at a simple diner near the shelter. During the meal, Jason told him about his life, how he'd taught himself to read, how he dreamed of studying law to defend people like him, how he looked after the younger boys at the shelter when the older ones bullied them. "You want to be a lawyer?" Michael asked, surprised. "Yes, sir, I want to help people like me, the ones no one listens to, the ones everyone treats badly." Jason pushed the food around his plate. "Mom always said you protected people. I want to protect them too, but in my own way." Michael felt immense pride mixed with deep sorrow. His son had grown up with noble values despite all the hardships. Sarah had done a good job, even with all her struggles. "Jason, tell me how your mum, how she passed." The boy's face darkened. "She got really sick at the end. A cough that wouldn't go away, so much weakness. She said it was because of the stuff she used before, that it had hurt her body." Jason wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his new shirt. "In her last days, she just kept saying your name. Michael, Michael. I think she wanted to see you one more time." Michael had to get up from the table to cry in the restroom. Sarah had passed calling for him, and he hadn't even known she was still alive. If he'd known, he would have run to her, would have taken care of her, would have met Jason when he was still a child. When he returned to the table, Jason was looking out the window, watching families pass by on the street. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son." "Why didn't you ever look for Mom when she disappeared?" The question cut through Michael like a knife. How could he explain to a 15-year-old boy the complexity of a failed marriage, the wounded pride, the feeling of being abandoned? "I did look, Jason. I looked for almost 2 years, but your mum, she didn't want to be found. And I was young, too proud to keep insisting." Michael held his son's hand. "It was the biggest mistake of my life. If you'd known about me, would you have looked for me? I would have moved heaven and earth to find you." Over the next few weekends, Michael took Jason to see his life. The small but tidy apartment, his co-workers, the places he liked to go. Jason soaked it all up with curiosity, asking questions about a cop's routine, about how Michael had chosen that career. "I wanted to protect people," Michael explained during a walk in the park. "But I think I forgot to protect the ones who mattered most." Mom said protecting isn't just about wearing a uniform and carrying a gun. She said it's about caring, listening, understanding. Jason kicked a pebble on the path. I think you do protect people. You protected me when you found out who I was. With each meeting, their bond grew stronger, but so did Michael's worries. Jason was behind in his studies because of the unstable life he'd led. He had constant nightmares and anxiety when he was away from his father too long. The shelter reported he was isolating himself more and more from the other boys. He's not adjusting well to the situation, Mrs. Wilson said during a meeting. Jason has developed a very strong emotional dependence on you. That could be problematic if something goes wrong with the custody process. Nothing will go wrong, Michael insisted. I'll do whatever it takes to stay with my son. But Michael hadn't counted on the resistance he started facing at work. Some colleagues questioned his ability to judge homeless minors now that he had a personal stake in the matter. Others hinted that he was being too soft, that he had lost the objectivity needed for police work. Michael, you've been different, commented Sergeant Johnson, his partner of 10 years. Yesterday you let 3 kids go through the stoplight without even saying a word. Before you'd go right over and break it up immediately. Maybe I've learned that not every kid on the street is a criminal, Michael replied, with no patience for explanations. Look, I get that you found your boy and all, but you can't let that affect the job. The others will start thinking they can cause trouble around here. Michael knew Johnson was partly right, but he could no longer see the street kids the same way. Every young face he approached could be someone's child, someone who was searching, someone who needed help, not scolding. At home, he spent his nights studying parenting, reading books about how to handle teenagers who had been through trauma. He discovered that Jason would likely suffer the effects of his hard life for a long time: trust issues, fear of abandonment, self-esteem problems. During one of his visits to the shelter, Michael found Jason crying in his room, clutching an old photo of Sarah. "What happened, son?" "I'm scared, Dad," Jason sobbed. "What if the tests come back wrong? What if I'm not really your son? What if you give up on me?" Michael sat on the narrow bed and hugged Jason tightly. "Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Even if we weren't related by blood, you'd still be my son. You know why? Because family isn't just who you're born with. Family is who chooses to stay together. Promise you won't abandon me. I swear by St. Michael's medal, by your mother's memory, by my life. You're my son, and I'm your father. That will never change." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The DNA test results arrived on a rainy September Tuesday. Michael was at the precinct when Mrs. Wilson called, asking him to come urgently to the courthouse. His heart raced. What if there had been a mistake? What if Jason wasn't really his son? When he arrived, he found Jason sitting on a chair in the hallway, nervously bouncing his legs. The boy stood up as soon as he saw Michael and ran to hug him. "Dad, I'm so scared." "Me too, son. But whatever the result, we'll face it together." Mrs. Wilson called them into a private room where the doctor in charge of the tests was waiting. Dr. Richard Miller, a bald man with glasses, opened the envelope with the solemnity of someone who knew he was about to change lives. "The results are conclusive," he said, looking directly at Michael. "There's a 99.7% genetic match between your material and Jason Thompson Carter's. You are biological father and son." Michael let out a deep sigh and hugged Jason, who began to cry with relief. 15 years of doubt, 15 years of searching had finally come to an end. "Can we go home now?" Jason asked. "We still need to complete the legal process," Mrs. Wilson explained. "But the confirmed paternity speeds things up a lot. In 2 weeks, if all goes well, you can be together for good." 2 weeks felt like 2 years to father and son. Michael used the time to prepare the apartment for Jason, buying a new bed, a desk for studying, and decorating the room with things a teenager would like. Jason, meanwhile, said goodbye to his friends at the shelter. Some were happy for him, others showed envy. Tyrone, the same one who had doubted Michael's sincerity, approached him on the last day. "Man, I'm sorry for saying those things. I was just jealous." Tyrone looked at the ground. "Take good care of your dad, okay? Not everyone is lucky enough to find family." "You'll find yours too," said Jason, hugging his friend. "And if you ever need anything, you know where to find me." On the day of the final release, Michael arrived at the shelter at 7 in the morning, an hour earlier than scheduled. He hadn't been able to sleep from anxiety. Jason was already ready, with a small backpack containing all his belongings. A few clothes, his mother's photo, the St. Michael medal, and some drawings he had made during his years at the shelter. "Ready to go home, son?" "More than ready, Dad." Michael's apartment was in an old but well-kept building in the Astoria neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a functional kitchen. To Jason, used to the shared dormitories of the shelter, it looked like a palace. "This is your room," said Michael, opening the door to the space he had decorated with so much care. Jason stepped in slowly, touching each object as if he couldn't believe it all belonged to him. The bed with fresh sheets, the study desk, the bookshelf, the clothes neatly arranged in the closet. "Dad, is all this really mine?" "All yours, son, and that's not all. You have a father now, a family, someone who will help you with school, take care of you when you're sick, celebrate your achievements." That night, Michael made a special dinner: rice, beans, steak with onions, fries, and salad. Simple food, but made with love. Jason ate 3 helpings, saying it was the best meal of his life. At the shelter, the food wasn't bad, but it never tasted like family food, you know? After dinner, Michael showed Jason how the shower worked, how to adjust the water temperature, how to use the washing machine. Basic things the boy had never properly learned. "Tomorrow, we'll enroll you in a good school," said Michael, arranging the books on the shelf. "You might need extra help in some subjects, but I'm sure you'll do well." "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always, son." "Do you regret finding me? I mean, your life was easier before without having to take care of a troubled kid like me." Michael stopped what he was doing and sat on the bed beside Jason. "Jason, listen to me. You're not troubled. You're a brave boy who's been through things no child should ever face. And finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." Michael held his son's hands. "You know why? Because you taught me what it really means to protect people. You reminded me that behind every person on the street, there's a story, a family, a dream. Mom was right then. You really are a hero." "No, son, you're the hero. You never gave up looking for me. You took care of your mom when she was sick. You helped the younger kids at the shelter. You're the one who taught me to be a better man." In the first few months together, father and son faced some challenges adjusting. Jason had frequent nightmares and would wake up in the middle of the night searching for Michael. Sometimes he'd cry for no apparent reason, still processing all the changes in his life. Michael, in turn, was learning how to be a father to a teenager. He wasn't quite sure how to handle the mood swings, the anxiety Jason felt before school tests, or the typical insecurities of his age. "Dad, what if I don't pass the grade?" Jason asked one night after hours of studying math. "Son, you will, and if you don't on the first try, we'll try again. What matters is not giving up." School was another challenge. Some classmates made cruel remarks about Jason having lived in the shelter, calling him orphan or abandoned. The boy would come home sad, wondering if it was even worth continuing his studies. "They say those things because they don't understand your story," Michael explained. "You've been through experiences that made you stronger, more mature. That's an advantage, not a disadvantage." "But it hurts, Dad. It hurts when they laugh at me." "I know it hurts, but remember your dream of becoming a lawyer. To make that dream come true, you need to study. You need to be stronger than their words. And I'll always be here, supporting you." Little by little, things started falling into place. Jason became friends with Kevin, a classmate who also lived only with his father. The two got along well, studied together, and Jason began to feel more included. Michael, in turn, found his rhythm as a father. He learned to cook meals Jason liked, helped with homework, and recognized when his son needed space and when he needed to talk. At work, his perspective had completely changed. When he encountered minors on the street, Michael tried to talk before taking action, seeking to understand each one's situation. He began carrying pamphlets with information about shelters, schools, and social programs. "Michael, you a social worker now?" Sergeant Johnson teased. "I became a dad," Michael replied, "and that changes everything." A year after reuniting, Michael was promoted to lieutenant, partly because of the unique work he'd been doing with at-risk youth. He had created a pilot program for a more compassionate approach, which was yielding good results in the area. "Dad, I'm proud of you," Jason said when he heard about the promotion. "You really protect people now. I learned from you, son." Jason, meanwhile, had become one of the top students in his class. His grades in English and history were exemplary, and he actively participated in the student council, always advocating for social causes. "I want to organize a donation drive for shelters," he told Michael over dinner. "There are so many kids struggling, and we can help. How about we talk to Mrs. Wilson? She can tell us what's most urgently needed." Mrs. Wilson was moved by Jason's proposal. The boy who had left the shelter had come back to help those left behind. "That boy has a heart of gold," she told Michael. "You and Sarah can be proud of him." Michael smiled, remembering Sarah. Every day he thanked her, wherever she was, for raising such a special son, for keeping St. Michael's medal, for telling stories about his father that kept Jason from ever giving up on finding him. In Jason's room, on a small table beside his bed, there were always two photos, one of Sarah smiling in her wedding dress, and a new one of father and son together on the day Jason graduated from his college prep course with honors. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" Jason said one night as they watched TV. "Of course, son. Sometimes I dream about Mom, and she always says the same thing, that she's happy we found each other, that now she can rest in peace." Michael felt his eyes fill with tears. "She was right about you being a hero, Dad. You saved my life when you recognized me as your son. And you saved mine, Jason. You taught me it's never too late to start over, to do the right thing." 2 years after their reunion, Jason was accepted into law school at a public university with one of the highest entrance exam scores. Michael couldn't contain his pride. "Dad, I dedicate this acceptance to you and Mom. Without you, I never would have made it this far." "No, son. This achievement is yours. You fought, you studied, you never gave up. Your mother and I just loved you. The credit is all yours." At the celebration party, Michael invited Mrs. Wilson, some co-workers, and even Tyrone, who had gotten a job at a mechanics shop after leaving the shelter. "Man, you really made it," Tyrone said to Jason. "Gonna be a lawyer and everything. I want to see if you remember your friends when you're famous." "I'll always remember, Tyrone. And when I graduate, you'll be my first client if you ever need legal help." During the party, Michael gave an emotional speech. 3 years ago, I was a cop who thought I knew life, who believed I could tell right from wrong. Until I met a boy selling candy at a traffic light and realized I knew nothing. That boy taught me about forgiveness, perseverance, and unconditional love. He taught me family isn't just who you're born with, it's who chooses to stay with you." Michael looked at Jason with tears in his eyes. "Jason, you're my pride, my son, my redemption. Thank you for never giving up on finding me." Everyone applauded, and Jason hugged his father, whispering, "Thank you for accepting me as your son, even before you knew I was really yours." Years later, when Jason was in his 3rd year of law school and interning at a legal clinic for underprivileged people, Michael reflected on how life had strange ways of fixing past mistakes. Jason had specialized in child and adolescent law, defending at-risk minors, fighting for better conditions in shelters, and working to reunite families like theirs. "Dad, I got the court to approve little Timmy's custody for his aunt," Jason said, coming home beaming. "It was a 3-year process, but he's finally leaving the shelter." "That's great, son. Another family reunited thanks to your work." Michael had become coordinator of the community outreach program, now a model for other precincts. He gave talks on how officers could work more effectively with vulnerable youth. The key, he'd say in his speeches, is remembering every child on the street is someone's son, someone who might be searching, someone who might be hurting. Our job isn't just enforcing the law, it's protecting people. And sometimes protecting means understanding, talking, offering opportunities. At one of these talks, a young officer raised her hand. "Lieutenant Thompson, how did you develop this perspective? What changed your approach?" Michael smiled, thinking of Jason. I found out I had a son who needed me, and that taught me we're all someone's child. We all need someone. The day I understood that, I changed not just as an officer, but as a person. That evening, Michael came home to find Jason studying for his final exams. The skinny boy who once sold candy at the traffic light had grown into a determined young man, soon to be a lawyer. How was the talk, Dad? Good. I talked about you, about how you taught me to be a better cop. You're always teaching me too. Just yesterday, I was thinking about something you said. What? That family is who chooses to stay together. And I choose you, Dad. Forever. Even when I get married, have kids, move away, you'll always be my family. Michael hugged his son, his heart overflowing with gratitude. 15 years apart, 15 years of pain, had turned into a love nothing could break. I choose you too, son. Forever. That night before bed, Michael took the St. Michael medal now framed in the living room beside Sarah's photo. Silently, he thanked every twist of fate that had brought them back together, every coincidence that wasn't just coincidence, and all the love that had endured time and distance. From the next room, Michael heard Jason whispering on the phone with his girlfriend, talking about their future plans, the law firm he wanted to open, and how he'd help other families reunite. Michael smiled. His son had inherited Sarah's compassion and sensitivity, and from him, he'd learned determination and a sense of justice. Together, father and son would keep protecting people, each in their own way, each making the world a little better. The next morning, Michael woke to the smell of coffee Jason was brewing. It was Saturday, their day out together, a day to talk about everything and nothing, a day to simply be a family. Good morning, Dad. Hot coffee's waiting for you. Good morning, son. How'd you sleep? Good. I dreamed about Mom again. She was smiling, said she was proud of us both. Michael hugged Jason, feeling as if Sarah was truly there somehow, blessing the family she'd helped build through love and perseverance. She has every reason to be proud. We made it, didn't we? We did, Dad. We're a real family. And they were. Not a traditional family, not one without scars, but a true family, built on love, forgiveness, and the courage to start over. A family that had found each other when they needed it most, that had chosen to stay together and would keep facing whatever life brought. Because some stories don't end. They just turn into new stories, new chapters of love and hope that spread through the world like seeds planted by fate. Michael and Jason Thompson Carter were living proof that it's never too late to find the family you always had, but circumstances pulled apart, and that the love between a father and son is a force strong enough to heal any wound, overcome any obstacle, and turn any sad ending into a new story of happiness. The end. Now, tell me what you thought of this heartwarming story of a father and son's reunion. Do you believe Michael made the right choices? How would you feel in Jason's place? Share your thoughts and emotions in the comments. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales that show love always finds a way. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.